For most of my career, I've been a criminal prosecutor. I started as an assistant district attorney in the Manhattan DA's office. I then became a federal prosecutor, and eventually I became a state prosecutor, the chief state prosecutor, when I was the Attorney General for the state of New Jersey. As Attorney General, I was the chief law enforcement officer for the state, and so I was responsible for setting criminal justice policy, for overseeing all police and prosecutors statewide. And that job changed the way that I see criminal justice in America. Before that job, as an assistant DA and as a federal prosecutor, I only looked at the cases in front of me. I made decisions based on my instinct and my experience. But when I became Attorney General, for the first time, I looked at the system as a whole, from a bird's eye view. And I wanted to know if we were making the best decisions we could make to make our communities safer. I also wanted to know some fundamental things, like who we were arresting for committing crimes, who we were prosecuting or charging for committing crimes, and who we were putting into our jails. This turned out to be very difficult. It turns out that agencies like the Attorney General's office and a lot of other government agencies don't actually track the things that matter. One day I walked into a conference room. There were dozens of detectives with huge stacks of files. They were cases, and they had a yellow legal pad with them. They were trying to answer the questions I'd asked about who was in our system, and they were doing that by going case by case through the past 5 years. And in that instant, I realized that we didn't actually know the answers to the questions that I was asking, some pretty basic and fundamental questions. And we were making decisions, critical decisions, every single day that impact public safety without knowing whether they were the right ones. And all of this matters greatly. We live in a world, whoops, can we go back? Sorry. We live in a world where we have 12 million, in a country where we have 12 million arrests every single year. Just 5% of those are violent crime arrests, serious violent crime. The rest, 70 or 80%, are low-level crimes or misdemeanors. And we spend each year over $75 billion, that's billion dollars, on incarcerating people in state and local jails and prisons. That's usually the second highest item in state budgets. So we spend an absolute fortune on this. And all of our jails are overcrowded. 2/3 of the people in our nation's jails, more than 3,000 jails, are there pre-trial, meaning that they're there waiting to have their day in court. So when I took my current job running a criminal justice initiative at the Arnold Foundation, I came back to a lot of these same questions. I wanted to figure out how we could do this better in America. And the truth is, we know that we can, because we live in a Moneyball world. We use smart data and analytics to treat chronic illnesses, to keep kids from dropping out of school, and even to win baseball games. And baseball is a good analogy here because scouts used to go out and look for players based on instinct and experience. And today they use smart data and statistics to figure out how to pick players and how to win games. Moneyball and smart data and analytics has changed almost every industry we can think of, but it hasn't changed criminal justice yet, but it can. One critical example of how data and analytics can be used to transform criminal justice comes with measuring risk and determining risk. Before I became an assistant district attorney, I assumed that everyone in the criminal justice system made decisions on risk, on what risk an individual posed to public safety, whether someone would be dangerous in the community or not. I thought police did this, prosecutors did this, judges and jails. But it turns out we actually don't. We make decisions usually based on offenses that people have committed, not on the risk that they pose to our public safety. And you need to look no further than who's in and who's not in our nation's jails to understand this. When you look around the country, what you find is that the people who, through data and analytics, we identify as being the highest risk, meaning the most likely to commit new crimes if we release them, 50% of those are out. Many of them are released within hours of having been arrested. And again, those are the people that we worry the most about and who we most want to keep incarcerated so that they don't commit other crimes or acts of violence. Now, on the other side of this, we do an equally terrible job. When you look at our nation's jails, you find that they are filled with low-risk people who are nonviolent and have often committed minor or petty offenses. And many of those people, overwhelmingly, are staying in jails because they can't make $500 or $1,000 bail. And this is because these system errors are because we don't measure risk. We don't use risk in decision making, and most jurisdictions don't even know what risk someone poses. In fact, in New Jersey, we didn't even know who was in our system. The good news is that Moneyball and data and analytics can change this. For the past year and a half, I've collected data from over 300 US jurisdictions, from every state in the country, and from a lot of other cities, counties, and states. And what we've done with a lot of smart data scientists, fabulous researchers, and really brilliant statisticians is we've built a risk assessment tool that every judge in the United States can use. And they can use this very simple tool to decide and to figure out who poses a risk of violence if they're released, who will commit a new crime, has a high likelihood of committing a crime if they're released, who doesn't pose a risk of violence, who doesn't have a high likelihood of committing a new crime. And this tool has now gone live in the state of Kentucky and will go live shortly in a number of other jurisdictions. I believe that Moneyball can change the way that we process crime and do criminal justice in America. The great news for all of us is that we know it works. It's why Google is Google. It's why the Oakland A's are in the playoffs. And it's how we can do criminal justice in a way that will make our streets safer, our prison costs much less, and our criminal justice system fairer. Some people call it data science, but I call it moneyballing criminal justice. Thank you very much.